books were like.
Teilhard de Chardin is a little more aware of the meaning of the electronic than Darwin could possibly have been.
When people had the scriptures in their hands and they could say, well,
de Chardin.
I've got everything I need.
So it's interval and it's resonant. The resonant interval is touch. And that is called the chemical bond by Linus Pauling.
You see, the electricity puts your nervous system outside as an environment.
When you have instant access.
By the way, look at cover of Gene 8.
Every kind of data.
TV guide, Dali picture of what TV really is.
Data classification.
But he knew that those
a rather futile.
Those two thumbs containing two TV screens had to have a big interval between them because interval is
and
touch.
Pattern
TV is touch.
Recognition becomes
on the horizon. He put a little bit of brain tissue.
Mandatory. The only way of coping
to show that the environment
with
of electric power is
instant and
central nervous system.
Whole fields of data.
We now live inside our own nervous system as a world environment.
And
there's a story of Edgar Allan Poe
I simply use slides
that has some relevance here called The Maelstrom.
Somebody said, why don't you package it? And so just pictures and time inside. I've never thought of it before. Anyway, that's where the book came. That's where the cry came from.
That book seems so playful compared to your so-called literary criticism.
Well, sure, because the nature of the material lends itself to Olympian satire. By the way, all of my work is satire. Olympian satire means just using the everyday world as a satire on itself.
Apropos of McLuhan's political views, it is important to remember that above and foremost, McLuhan was a satirist. He used to say, all my work is satire, and read in a certain way, it appears fairly evident. He used to make fun of politicians and fun of business people, and far from pandering to the powers that be, I think that he always kept a very safe distance from them. And perhaps the most important thing about McLuhan, besides the satire, is freedom. The freedom of any kind of bind or tie to a cause, a party, or any particular type of thing that would turn him into a fundamentalist of any kind.
Well, now that's about the situation on the book.
So, so you were saying, and then we went off onto a tangent, that your books had the effect they had because they were post-literate books.
Only one or two of my books had any effect. That's the Gutenberg and
the Understanding Medium. And the Messages of Messiah. The medium is the
But that's not a book. That's a little pamphlet.
That's a collage.
With a few little quotes, that's all.
Yeah, but
That's not a book.
It isn't a book. You don't consider it a book.
I didn't make that book. Jerry Hagel put it together.
You just provided the written text.
No, I didn't. He gathered those quotes from my stuff.
Oh, I see.
No, I didn't write it.
And the pictures you didn't select?
No.
Really? Oh, that's very extraordinary.
But he and he of course makes far more of the book than I do. And he makes 50%, and the other chap makes 25%, and I get, I think, 10% or less.
Mm-hmm.
The chap who did the pictures, Theory, gets 25%. Hagel gets 50, and I get about 10. Yeah.
Well,
but I mean, this is, and he didn't write it either. You know, he just pulled the excerpts together and put some pictures. But anyway, it still sells.
Yeah. But when you say your books don't sell very, haven't sold very well.
No.
I might be wrong, but I'm never in doubt. You know, and that's been a credo that's always guided me.
I'm the publisher, of course, never tells you, but the royalties are very small.
Even on Understanding Medium,
Very
which I would
small.
have thought was your...
It's used everywhere as a textbook, but it produces very little money.
Yeah, it's probably borrowed from libraries and things where you don't get any money back.
Well, it's maybe, but I think the publisher just doesn't tell you. You never hear the truth.
Well,
No, there's no way of finding out how many it sells. Resented for doing these things.
The old Blarney, Killarney, or the minstrel boy to the
war is gone, all that sort of crap.
It's a long way from it's a long way home.
Mr. Soprano, I'm Michael McLuhan from the U.S. Marshal Service, here to reattach your electronic bracelet.
You know, I don't think I've read more than 30 pages in the book yet, and it's how many years? Because I find I can take a paragraph of his and explore it for 10 years.
They give you the important jobs, huh?
Excuse me, your name's really McLuhan?
Right.
So that makes you Marshal McLuhan.
Tribal Balbutians.
And kids today don't give a damn about private ethics, but they are very deeply concerned about public ethics. That's just pure hypocrisy on their part, but they don't know any better.
And I do that too, except that I am careful to make my statements annoying.
It takes a lot more. Anyway, as I say, I was very lucky to grow up in a society where there were no classes of any sort. You get the sense, by the way, multitude means universality.
When you're on the telephone, you don't have a physical body.
That's what the motion of multitude is. It means this is the condition of man, this is the way it is. The undergraduates at Cambridge are appalled.
When you don't have a physical body.
Naturally, there are a few bright ones.
But not any more than in Canada.
No more than in Canada.
You don't have an identity. When you don't have an identity, you don't have any morals.
As a place to grow up in. Oh. No, I was right.
When you don't have a physical body, you don't have an identity. When you don't have an identity, you don't have any morals.
Tribal Balbutians.
McLuhan was creating the persona of the scholar who is also the cultural commentator who reconciles in his own mind, his own person, the terrible divisions that we have between high culture and popular culture that we still suffer from, despite everything that Andy Warhol and Klaus Oldenburg, the great pop artist, did. We still have a terrible gap. I want a whole new curriculum, and I want the students in the classroom in the 90s to be much more skeptical about what they're getting, okay? If the teacher in a, say, cultural studies course about media, okay, is giving them moralistic terms that make them superior to media, using words like commodification, okay, or sexual objectification about women, or if you getting kind of a moral tone.
And the kids today don't give a damn about private ethics, but they are very deeply concerned about public ethics. That's just pure hypocrisy on their part, but they don't know any better.
Yeah. I'm doing a book called The Second God.
Yeah. Is there any relation to the first one?
Well, you see, I say the first God created man, and he's been trying to make man moral ever since. And man created the second God, and he's trying to make that moral ever since. I've taken children's recordings and shown that their concept of media is identical with their concept of God.
Well, look, now that's very important.
Reach out and touch someone far away.
Things lately has been the discovery that when you're on the telephone or on the air, you don't have a physical body.
Yeah.
When you don't have a physical body, you don't have an identity. When you don't have an identity, you don't have any morals.
You getting a kind of moral tone and a kind of condemning tone about media, you can be sure your teacher doesn't know has his or her ass from his or her elbow, okay? Because I just absolutely loathe the importation of moralistic terms from the Judeo-Christian realm into the pagan realm of mass media. You know, mass media are completely amoral. It's completely immoral, okay? And if you're going to use terms, you're going to have to use them from the history of paganism, not from the history of Judeo-Christianity.
Some of his perceptions are absolutely startling and remarkable.
Here's the Norman Mailer story at Berkeley. A few months ago, he was addressing a women's lib group.
The women's lib, and this program is related to that.
Liberation.
Women's lib is an extreme form of violence and upset.
Maybe to you.
Entirely related to television and TV.
The audience and my...
Visit the American Museum of Natural History.
Buzzing at that remark. You better explain it quickly before we become violent.
TV, as a medium, fosters a very inclusive attitude to life
Role-playing, in fact, not fragmented, specialized job holding. The nature of TV, with its inclusive acoustic character.
And so the men tend to be entirely in the left hemisphere in their training and their work. Women are much more inclined to be role players. That means multiple jobs. And so this, a mother all over the centuries has never had a job. She has a role.
The reason that most of you in this room find it difficult to imagine a goal in life is simply that you're living in an electric world where everything happens at once. It's hard to have a fixed point of view in a world where everything is happening simultaneously. It is hard to have an objective in a world that is changing faster than you can imagine the objective being fulfilled. Women's lib, therefore, has very deep roots in the new technology and is not just a matter of votes for women.
De Tocqueville had no trouble understanding.
It means that the work that is being performed by men today can, in many cases, be done better by women.
The logic of
Right, now, how did you relate this to a violent movement?
Well, any kind of invasion.
Will you write 245 on there? It's a flight number just anywhere. 245. Got it. Thanks.
Women be less specialist by tendency than men.
Gutenberg technology of the movable, sequential, movable type
More at home.
produced a mass product, the book, the first mass-produced commodity,
Better able, they think,
was the prototype of a great series of such commodities.
take over the old men.
The mechanization of the art or handicraft of the scribe took place by this segmenting, the breaking up of his movements into these little movable types,
Flexibility of
and all into subsequent industrial processes. And the building up of all subsequent industrial operations followed that pattern, so that the gradual increase of industry in Europe and the Western world is directly associated with the printed word. And the printed word, in the meantime, was building up unified national marketing conditions and unified pricing systems, which altogether created an industrial galaxy which we still associate with the Western way of life. The reader is the ideal consumer type, and the markets created for and by print and printed books, newspapers and so on, are also there to serve the needs of industrial distribution. All of these patterns are changing today, but we can go into that later. But one of the immediate consequences of having a uniform marketing population, marketable or available market population, a uniformly literate manpower pool, was in terms of political power, the rise of the citizen army. De Tocqueville, in his study of the Ancien Regime,
of any kind of a territory is a form of violence. Pornography invades privacy.
Right, now I get it.
So any invasion of another territory is violence.
Yes, the women's invading the men's world is violence.
For sure.
Yeah, and TV was responsible for it.
Well, it turned off the left hemisphere.
Is to foster role-playing. Now, women are great role-players.
We're moving into a world
Men are not. Men are job holders fond of repetitive tasks.
where women will be the only power.
Women are multiple task people.
Any woman. What will men be doing? Still keeping each other under surveillance.
Able to slip from one to another. A mother has 100 jobs, not one. And so they are born role players. And role playing is the very opposite of our whole society.
Everybody in this hall who regards me as a male chauvinist pig hiss. And they all hissed very loudly. And he turned to the chairman and he said, "Obedient little bitches, aren't they?"
I mean, the medium is the message. It's one of the most useful remarks I think that have been uttered in the 20th century.
no one took television seriously. I'm talking about the middle of the 1960s. No one would dream of taking television seriously when I was in college.
Well, I see it on another level now. You tell me whether you think this has any meaning. Basically, if you bring the world into the home, you inherently bring the world into the minds of women, and then they want to get into that world.
Sure.
You see? So that's the violence in the
you get my piece on the inside-outside?
No.
I'll send it to you. But it concerns only the fact that North Americans are the only people in the world who go outside to be alone and inside to be social.
I've heard your thinking on that.
Well, the motor car, you see, is the supreme form of privacy.
Is that the one that was in the communications magazine?
Yeah, it was in there.
Yeah, I have.
You have that? Yes. Well, now, women, you see, are involved in that. And television, by bringing the outside into the home, is upsetting that whole pattern of American life.
Yes, you see, I said that the television and radio had more to do with the women voting than all the women who fought for women's rights. Because once you brought it into the minds of women, you brought women into that field. And the same thing is with the civil rights movement. Now, the interesting implication in your statement yesterday was that the whole question of crime is a product of the violence of television.
Well, yes, it's lost because there's a loss of identity.
Yes, but you see,
with loss of identity, people become very violent.
You see, they don't go into the role of commercials and the good. I've been doing interviews with prisoners, and I find that they consider the world. For instance, if you take the Good Life shows, or you take Maud and some of these shows, we will consider them somewhat fantasy. The prisoners consider them reality. They consider the police shows fantasy. Because they know that's not like real life, you see? And so...
But the soaps they regard as real.
The soaps... That's right. The soaps they regard as real. The police ones they regard as fantasy. Now, a fascinating thing is that they also... that you find that I consider the crime shows almost like instruction books, and the goals, the thing that gives them goals are the Good Life shows and the commercials. So they are more related to the violence than the others, and then the fact that inherently TV makes us an auditory people who are more prone to be violent, you see.
Well, just a moment. The auditory people may be violent when they're in a non-auditory world, but when they're in an auditory world, no.
They're more volatile.
Oh, yes. Yes, they are. That's why they can't touch booze.
You know? Yeah.
No, I mean all tribal people have to lay off the booze.
Why?
Because it drives them off the wall. That is, the Arabs and whoever, they can't touch it. Well, you know, even in the Jewish world, Tony, they have to go very easy on booze because the Jew is a tribal man.
You know, I've been getting into something, and tell me what you think of it. Marshall, first off, I have to tell you that it's about 10 years since we've known each other, and I owe you more in this world than I do any other person in terms of contributing to my thinking, and I look at you as the leader in this whole world, and I want you to know it.
Well, Tony, I'm very appreciative. I appreciate you.
They have automatically rediscovered the meaning of myth. They live mythically. They're still being educated and taught non-mythically, but they live mythically. They experience a huge disproportion or discontinuity between living integral, electrical, mythical lives.
But my understanding media is phenomenology of the media.
Teaching machine
that has no buildings.
If the software environment
if you don't know, that's one of Professor McLuhan's early books, Understanding Media, sort of the classic that...
It's not that early, my gosh. This is another example of that narrow attention span.
It's after a lot of literary criticism, after The Mechanical Bride.
Oh, no. Bride is 51. No, the Understanding Media is 64. 1964.
No, I said it's after.
Oh, it's after, oh yeah, I thought...
which is Sputnik.
because it seems to me that any phrase, in order to have any vogue at all, must correspond to some reality. And the word beatnik, derived from Sputnik, at least a conscious smirk or grimace in the Russian direction. A few years ago, attracted a great deal of consideration.
You were asking what I've been up to. I've been working on the history of Menippean satire. And history of who?
Is itself the sort of way in which I got into all my studies. I always tend to start with other people's ignorance.
Yeah.
But this is like starting with a disease or any problem. And so you move in as a therapist of some sort.
Well, when you decided that you are a therapist?
From the moment you begin to teach.
They irritate one another until they suddenly get a flash, insight.
You begin to take it as a gestalt.
That's why December always says that in certain circles, glorious reputation was 3 guys from Winnipeg. These are all buddies.
That's right, but not just.
The exploration school, then, now, and next.
Here you are, reading a book, you've got the damn thing in your hands. Don't lose consciousness. Yeah. That's the don't lose consciousness. Yeah. That's the
Man broken up into little bits.
Now that's interesting. I think the fact that you're a teacher is very important.
Sure. And you're attempting to improve situations by intervening in some way.
Would you say that in a way the Mechanical Bride was a textbook for your students?
No. In fact, it resulted from my classwork in my first teaching in the United States. Back in 1936, I began to use that method. It was a method which I had learned at Cambridge from these books right here.
Yeah.
That's when I was 6 years old, or 10 years old, or 12 years old. I would make these statements at the dinner table. I have always had ways of seeing that have been unconventional. As a small child, I was told at the dinner table over and over again by my father, would you get up and say that to a group of men?
Of course, because you said things like
yes,
that.
because unconventional things.
Like, can you remember?
No, because I was only 6 or 8 years old. But I would say, of course I would say it to a group of men. Naturally, why not? It's true. I have never seen metal big where the problem
And then I think Marshall was getting together a little group. Carl Williams, Ted Carpenter, of course.
I've worked on all these problems with Carpenter. There's another book called the Thing of Every Hell.
Oh, yes, I know that.
And this is one of the strange results of electronic circuitry in which you have everything going on at once.